Hello, everyone. I promise I'll try to be very quick. Although it's very hard. So I don't even know where to start. Because as we know, everything happened so quickly, and I don't think I've fully come to terms with what's happened this week. But unfortunately for me and many others around the world, this is very much real. Believe it or not, I've never had to write a speech before. This is actually my first time. And the fact that I'm writing this kind of speech for Kiernan is actually the most heartbreaking thing. How do I even begin to describe a friendship and a bond of someone that I've known for 15 years and 5 minutes? Or even begin to talk about the man and remarkably gifted and talented Kiernan Forbes. He always used to correct us in the beginning of our friendship. He used to say to me, you know, my name is Kiernan, not Keenan. But because most people couldn't say Kiernan, he just would let them say whatever he wanted. So every time he would call me, I would answer, and he would say, hey Tabo, how are you, champ? And I would say, hey Jared, how are you, champy? How are you, boy? We always called each other by second names. And every time I think that I will never be able to pick up the phone again and hear a voice on the other side of it is something that I'm yet to come to terms with. Like I said, I've known Kiernan for about 15 years, which in this line of work feels like a lifetime. I can't recall exactly how myself and Kiernan met, but the one early moment that stands out for me was when I asked him to accompany me to Durban for a show. This must have been probably in 2010 or early 2010 or late 2009. He always used to remind me how I took him to his first show out of town. That the first place he performed at outside of Johannesburg was when he once opened for JR, and he would always say, that is the last time that ever happened. And that's when this kind of sordid love affair began, that would turn into a long romance with that city, which makes it even harder to comprehend that a city that he loved like that would be the one to take him away from us. I recall the first time that I went to Kiernan's house, to Kiernan's mom's house in Norwood back then. That was many years ago, and he had to make a stop somewhere there to collect a laptop, etc. And I remember I was very nervous as I sat in the lounge, and I asked him to hurry up. But Lynn was nothing more than welcoming of me in her space like that. And that was my first introduction. Mine and Kiernan's friendship has always been a somewhat complicated one, yet a very loving one. But the two things that we had in common the most was the deep love for music and old school, like Chicago and all the 70s, 80s music that he would say that Tony would play for him. Kiernan would never hang up the phone without saying, I love you. Me and Kiernan and Jabu, it was never anything hard for us to say. Those three words were words that were easily spoken. Kiernan always loved and was proud of his family, and more especially his daughter, who was and still is the apple of his eye, and he spoke about Kyra all the time. Her accomplishments at school, performances, growth. Kiernan and I had a special bond of fatherhood, and I think that's one of the things that I'll probably miss the most. Kiernan was a multifaceted, extraordinarily talented human being. Very opinionated, brutally honest, and super competitive. He would always make it a point to give you the news straight, no chaser, whether you wanted it or not. And if the night didn't end with no debating, then it wasn't a night at all. Every conversation had to be engaging and intellectually stimulating. It was always iron sharpening iron with Kiernan. And if we debated at a point where he was right, all we would eat the whole night would be, yeah, you see, I was right, I told you. He never forgot to remind us, his friends, how he was a St. John's boy and he went to school and speaks very great English and etc. Every time we'd debate the grammar in a line that he would write in a song, he would say, trust me, I went to St. John's, I went to a good school. Some might have called him stubborn, and although they would say that about him, I called him decisive. Kiernan always did things his way, and in some funny way, his way just always mysteriously worked out. One example was supervision and control. the phrase that would then go over to become his. It was just something that we said one time when we were in studio, because they used to say it in Pretoria, where they say, hey, we're not rata supervision and control. And I said it to him and he said, aha, what did you say? I said, yeah, we're rata supervision and control. And he said, next thing I knew, this is for supervision and control. My professional relationship with Kiernan is one I will always remember. I remember when I released an album called Cool Forever, and I decided not to promo it at all. And a couple of months later, Kiernan called me and said, I'm working on my album and I want the same album, just with an AKA name on it. This would be the first time I would actually produce an album for someone or work on someone else's music but mine. After that, we would become musical sponges of each other. We would constantly try and outwrite each other, outperform each other. Who had the best band, who had the best live performances, the best chorus melodies, who performed with auto-tune first, etc. Like I said, it was always iron sharpening iron with Kiernan. You could never be around Kiernan and not want to be the best version of yourself. He demanded that you be the best version of yourself for the rest of your life. There was no time that Kiernan was not there for us as a group of friends. It was like he had a burning urge to help and to see everybody doing well, even if it meant to his own detriment. When he would give gladly and not expect anything in return, he was truly a blessing and a godsend to all that had the pleasure of being around him. Because Kiernan really was a God-fearing man and a praying man too. When I think that I will no longer get the 3 a.m. calls with a voice on the other side saying, Jay, listen to this, I shatter. I would like to think of myself as a sounding board along with Younger as well. Everyone knows not to really call me after 10 p.m., but for Forbes, it didn't really matter and he didn't really care. It didn't matter what the time was, he would call me at 3 a.m. when those were his working hours. I would always ask myself, but this man is so talented, so talented. Why would he feel the need to call me and ask me if this sounds good, if this chorus works, if this is how it's going to go? But then I remembered, because he is selfless, and as selfless as he was, he expected nothing less from the ones that he loved. He commanded you to be as selfless and as giving as he was, and that's something that you've got to admire. To Uncle Tony, to Lynn, Stephen, to Nadia, to Zintle and all extended family members, my prayers are with you every day, and I can't even begin to fathom how you feel. This is not only a loss for your family, but a loss for the entire world at large. We feel your pain, and I grieve with you, and I mourn with you, and I ask that God look after you during this tumultuous period. And to the Megacy, condolences. Let love fuel you and let love lead. I know you're upset, and I know you're angry, and I know you're heartbroken. But allow me to quote the Super Mega when I say, I never lack peace inside my heart. I tell her, let bygones be bygones. I kill him with kindness one by one. Please come one by one, because Jesus is my plug. At this stage, we're left with more questions than answers. But I choose to celebrate the life that Kiernan lived, which is a very purposeful, filled life. So I wrote this little blurb. It says, Kiernan's life, what a beautiful mystery. A real-time tell-all book with all the plots and twists of a midweek soapy. But a life filled with love, a life filled with passion and purpose. A life that inspired many and a life that taught many. The life of a father, a businessman, a risk taker, a multi-hyphenate, a bon vivant artiste par excellence. A life of a loud lover and an affectionate man who is never shy. The life of an organic intellectual, a believer and a God-fearer. The life of a praying man who spent most of his time on his knees with his hands to the sky. The beautiful life of Kiernan Jared Forbes. Rest in peace, Mega. When I say super, you say Mega, super! Super! I just don't have the auto-tune. Rest in peace, boy.